What up, nerds? My name is Leslie Smith. Welcome back to the Nerdy Narrative. Today is my April monthly wrap-up. There are 3 books on this list that are part of a secret project that I have started on. Those you'll be hearing about in a video that's going to be going up very soon. Witch King by Martha Wells. I was really looking forward to that one and it just did not land for me. I couldn't get into it. There was nothing about the book that had me invested wanting to know more. I was very confused, and after I got 25% of the way in, that's sort of my cutoff for if you haven't caught me by something at that point, I DNF. So that's what happened there. Next here on the list is a short story collection that I read during the month of April called Her Infernal Name and Other Nightmares by Robert P. Atone. I had so much fun reading this collection. One fear that I have when I do read a short story collection that's by the same author is I fear that they're all going to sound the same sort of tone or type of characters or content, and that was not the case with this one. If you follow me on Instagram, then you've likely already read some mini reviews or favorite quotes that I pulled from these stories, but when I read a short story, I like to share a sort of mini review on Instagram just to kind of give you a taste test of each story in the collection. I do have my Instagram handle in the description box if you want to go check that out. Next on the list, I read and loved The Malevolent Seven by Sebastian de Castell. I read the arc for this one. It comes out next week on the 16th. I have my dedicated review that's going to go up on May the 15th, so I would just say if you're interested in reading this new one by de Castell and you want to hear more thoughts about it, check out that review that's going to be coming out on the 15th, which means if you are not subscribed to the channel, now is a great time to hit that subscribe button. Next up that I read in April came out of Joan Didion's We Tell Ourselves Stories in Order to Live. This is a collection of all of her nonfiction essays. I read Los Angeles Notebook. The first section of it is about the Santa Ana winds, which I loved. I mean, I would really love a horror story about these Santa Ana winds. They just have a very ominous feel to them. I was eating that part up. And then she had a couple other sections to the essay that just, I was like, why is this part of this? Like, these 3 things do not connect, but that just happens sometimes with Joan. I read another arc that I picked up off NetGalley called We Love to Entertain by Sarah Strohmeyer. The majority of it was predictable. But thrillers to me, especially if you read thrillers a lot, are like slashers. There's a formula to them. And of course we have that bird's eye view. We're seeing everything that's going on and we're putting things together. I honestly thought there was going to be some big twist coming that I didn't see coming, because that's usually what happens to me. I'm really easy to pull one over on in a book, but I didn't get it. And it was one of those, in my opinion, that the ending kind of fell flat. This is one of those books I think would have benefited from an unresolved ending. Just the way that it was written throughout, I think if it had been left open to interpretation without an actual written ending, I think it would have made this book a 4-star read for me. Next, I read The Crew. This was one of the most fun books I have read. If you are a comic or manga lover, this book is for you. This is a comic or manga story without the pictures. The characters are described so well. What they're doing is described so well. There's just so much fun and banter, and there's a great story to it as well. I really hope people don't miss that there is depth to these characters, and I hope this is going to be a series that we're going to get more from this from. I'm not ready for this to be over. This is going to be a book that I predict you're going to hear a lot of people say they're going to want to reread it when they need to bust out of a slump or just have some fun, just get some laugh, just joy. This book is joy on paper. That's exactly what it is. Like, it makes me feel good just to hold it, just knowing what's contained in these pages. And I have it in my library that I can just pull it down whenever I want to and reread, revisit these characters and this story. I cannot wait for more from this world, this story, these characters, this magic system. I have questions about some of the types, the groups of people that we got introduced to in here, and I want more. Next, I picked up and loved no surprise. T. Kingfisher has always been a sure thing for me. Nettle and Bone delivered. This was my patron pick of the month, and Amanda, you just knocked it out of the park. I loved this one, and I loved the audiobook. I cannot remember who the narrator is. I left my journal downstairs with the book that I'm currently reading because I was reading in bed last night, but this book was amazing. It's almost like an anti-fairy tale. Instead of the main character wanting to marry a prince, she wants to kill a prince. She has no clue how to go about it. So she starts seeking out help. She's like, can I learn to do magic? Can I get people who can help me? It's such a unique and unusual story. I just absolutely adored it. It's officially on my list of books that I wish I could reread again for the first time. It's such a great experience. I shouldn't be surprised when she adds in some witty banter with her characters because it's been in every one of hers that I've read so far, whether it be horror or fantasy, and I'm just here for it. Next on the pile is The Undertaker's Daughter by John James Minster. It's a horror story with a surprise sort of character that's involved. That's a type that I love, and I'm not going to tell you about it. I didn't know it was in there. I don't want you to know about it either. I want you to uncover it like I did. But the most interesting thing about this one is normally when I read horror that has any type of religious aspect to it, it has a Catholic spin to it. But the spin in The Undertaker's Daughter is a Jewish spin, but there's also a Christian one as well. We have two best friends. One's a Christian and one's Jewish, and they have the most interesting discussions about their religion and their faith with one another and how they live it and how they're okay that the other one doesn't share their beliefs. That was so freaking well done. We could all learn from these characters. I am sad that that type of friendship is fiction. I wish we could be that way with one another. This world would be But this is about a teenager named Anna who is brought out of her shell. Her friend Naomi gives her a makeover because Anna has a little bit of a crush on a boy and she wants to go to a local bar and listen to his band play. Unfortunately, the makeover is not just a benefit that this boy that she's crushing on sees. Unfortunately, she draws the notice of the school bully. There is an altercation between the two. The bully ends up going to jail, and once he gets out of jail, that's when everything starts getting sideways, and Anna's just trying to figure out, what can I do to protect myself and my family? And things just start getting away from her, and it is so good. I could not put this book down. I knew nothing about this author. I'd never read John James Minster before, didn't know what to expect, had no idea where this story was going to go, but I sat down to give it a try, and I was going to try like a couple of chapters. 100 pages later, and I was like, I don't want to put this down and go to bed. I just want to sit up all night and read it. I thought this one was excellent. Next in my pile here, I've got Side Jobs. This is a short story collection that take place between the different books of the Dresden Files. The story that I read out of this one this month was Vignette. It takes place after book 5 of the Dresden Files, Death Mask, and it's just sort of a piece of flash fiction that is an advertisement for the series. There's really no value in this short story whatsoever because I'm already a fan of the Dresden Files, but I read it. The next piece of completed work that I finished was the collection Manxiety by Damon Manx. This collection knocked my socks off. This is a collection of horror short stories, but it's honestly part memoir. Every one of the stories in this collection came from something that happened to the author or in the author's life, which really fed into my enjoyment of the stories because once I realized that's what was happening, I started having a lot of fun trying to figure out which part of the story was the truth and which was the fiction. But it was so well written. It was so good. It's one of those that I enjoyed so much that I feel is going to have rereadability for me because I'm going to continue reading Damon Manx. I just love this author's writing style so much. And I just have this feeling that as I continue reading his work, something that I'm going to read in later stories or books is going to make me think back to one of the stories in this collection, and I'm going to want to pick it back up and reread it. You know, and that's a big deal for a short story collection, at least in my opinion. I highly recommend that collection. And I also read the 5th installment in Joseph Sells' Book of Thrice Dead series, Beyond the Black Gates. I want to tell you about this book so much, but I can't because it would absolutely spoil things that are going to occur in the first 4 books, and I am so sad that this is about to be over, but I'm also eager to see how it's going to wrap up. I see why Joseph Sells incorporated the multiverse in this series because there was no way to contain this type of story on just one plane of existence. Like, just astronomical. My next delightful read was Phased by Victoria Tekken. This is a YA urban fantasy werewolf story. If you watch a lot of booktubers or you're on book Twitter, you've been seeing a lot of praise for this one, and it is for good reason. I loved the characters and their relationships with one another in this book. It was so wholesome. This was the kind of childhood I had with making friends. Now the werewolf and them being forced to assimilate in humanity by taking suppression drugs so that they didn't phase the world. Like, obviously I didn't have to deal with that, but my gosh, it's just so refreshing to read a book where it's not full of young people who have all of this angst and they're just worried about who likes who and what they're wearing and all that. Oh no. This one just has some excellent character studies in it, and I cannot wait to get my hands on the next book in the series. I believe it's going to be a duology, I think is what Tori was telling me, but oh my gosh, I am ready for book 2 like yesterday. Another short story collection that I read in April, I had no idea I went through so many short story collections. Like Damon Manx, James Flynn is someone I've read before and really enjoyed, and I did do a dedicated review for this collection. It's going to be out next Wednesday on the 17th, so I won't take up your time talking about the stories in this collection here. Instead, I'm going to say come back next Wednesday and hear all about it then. And let me know how that works. I've never gotten into reviewing short story collections because I feel like that would be incredibly hard. So I'm curious to see how my approach to reviewing a short story collection is going to go over, if there's any value to it. Just listen to it and see if, yes, this has value, go ahead and start reviewing short story collections, or nah, let's just stick to your little mini reviews on Instagram. I did continue my reread of the Wheel of Time series by Robert Jordan with The Shadow Rising, book 4. I am reading this book alongside Kate from the Literary Apothecary, Anitha, and Stacy. We do live shows at the end of every month talking about this in detail. I'll talk about all of my nostalgia, what I loved about book 4 in particular, and what I think it meant to the rest of the Wheel of Time series. All of that and more in the live show. I will have linked in the description box down below. And then the final read that I had for the month of April, and what a book to end it on, The Trials of Ashmount by John Palladino. I loved it just as much as the first time, but I enjoyed it more the second time because I knew what was going to happen. And some of the things that happened were things I wanted to happen so bad the whole time I was reading it the first time. And knowing that they were coming just gave me so much more joy as I was reading through this book this time. And I just loved it. Absolutely loved it. And just like the first time when I finished it, I was dying for more, and I had more waiting. I had Buzzard's Bowl waiting, and I went right into it, and that was just the perfect way to go about reading this series. And that is gonna wrap it up for me, all of the things that I read or tried to read during the month of April. It was an excellent month. I had some wonderful reads. Some of these reads really surprised me with how much I love them. I've got some new authors here that I really enjoyed, looking forward to reading more of. As an avid reader, I can't ask for more than that. So it's goodbye to April and hello to May. I'll be back here next month with another wrap up with all the things that I'm going to read during the month of May. Hope to see you back here for that one. Y'all have a great rest of your day, and I'll catch you in the next one.